May 7, 2024.
Up here, in fact, the inflow to this is actually strengthening. We see a good increase. Watch, yeah, needs to be in their shelter.
There's a wall cloud just south of the cell here. It's moving northeast.
There you go, tornado on the ground, guys.
It's a particularly dangerous situation. That's a level 3.
You need to be taking shelter for this tornado-warned storm. You can hear the tornado sirens in the background to mess around with today. I cannot stress that enough.
Okay, so I'm at the FedEx facility here in Portage on Portage Road, just north of the Pfizer facility, and this is a relatively new facility, and there's significant damage to this warehouse.
Just built that 3 years ago.
There's emergency crews there. I'm not sure of the estimate of injuries.
So today now marks the 1-year anniversary of May 7, 2024, of the tornadoes that happened in southern Michigan. These memories are still, at least for me, still stuck in my head for many reasons, just forecasting for the setup and kind of how the setup kind of unfolded, and just kind of like that helpless feeling you kind of had in your gut once you kind of saw what was really happening to the communities like Portage, Cullen, and Sherwood, as those significant tornadoes were moving through and impacting lots of people's lives. So it was definitely one of those days that you kind of wish would not happen, because usually you hear these stories that always happen out west to the south, where tornadoes are usually more common, especially the more violent ones. But I think we all knew eventually that there would be a story like this that would eventually come here, and unfortunately this was the case on this day. Here at MSC, we kind of were already starting to see the signs for a severe weather event for May 7, and even the threat for tornadoes a few days out. The day before, actually, on May 6th, there was a high risk that was in effect for Oklahoma, and actually ended up producing a EF4 tornado in Barnesdale, Oklahoma. That same system was eventually going to move its way quickly up to Michigan the next day on May 7. And I believe once that morning kind of came along, some of the staff, especially Ryan, noticed it, that the environment that was at play was looking more and more concerning as the day kind of went along. And it was something that was definitely a growing concern, and there wasn't really any signs that this event was starting to downtrend. It slowly looked more and more likely that there would be a few supercells that would move into the state, and even a few tornadoes, some that could even be potentially strong.
But we could definitely see a couple of these storms really crank up and produce severe weather here, including tornadoes. But I think the main concern still lies between large hail and damaging winds. But that threat for tornadoes does look to be increasing slightly since last night.
One thing that we knew as MSC is that we were going to have several chasers out chasing in southern Michigan, several chasers of which that lived around the area. But we had a few people that were out of commission due to business trips and other necessities at the time. So we knew kind of going into the setup that it was going to be a very busy day kind of going into it. And for me, I was chasing in southern Michigan. I kind of knew that this could be a pretty big, serious day. I've had a lot of chases in southern Michigan, but out of all my chases in southern Michigan for the past 4 years I've been chasing, this one looked to be the most volatile setup, and every key decision that was going to be made for that day was hugely important, especially with how fast the storms were going to be moving, and how if there would be even any tornadoes, that they would be most likely rain wrapped the majority of the time. So it was definitely a very serious setup, and one that you really had to be like on your game for as it all kind of played out. So
starting with the leading up to, we were tracking that system probably, close to 5+ days out. We started seeing the models hint at instability and wind shear kind of overlapping there. And that, when you usually get that overlapping of those, you kind of keep a closer eye on how things evolve as you get closer and closer to the event. But the day or two before May 7th, it became very clear that there is a very real risk for tornadoes across. The models were kind of hinting more so Indiana, but as we got to the morning of May 7th, they really started to shift more so toward that southwest Michigan area. And then leading into the morning of, we knew that we had some morning showers and rain kind of working through the state as well, where those can stabilize the atmosphere if they don't clear out in time. So we were watching that very closely. And once we saw the sun on the backside of that line of rain that kind of moved through the state. As soon as we saw that sun, we knew it was go time. So I personally, and also kind of internally with Michigan Storm Chasers, we had to kind of discuss, where our guys were heading because we were short staffed as it is that day. So usually it'd be like Joel and I on stream, maybe Nick occasionally. But that day, Joel and I both had this kind of mentality that this is potentially could be a big day. So we're going to chase it. And we knew we had help around the evening time frame with Nick and Chandler kind of coming into play. But we split early in the late morning, early afternoon toward that Kalamazoo area. And on the way there, it became very clear to me, looking at the data and the real-time data, that we had everything coming together for a significant severe event.
I was looking at some of the weather models that were kind of showing off this setup and like how things could unfold. And I did notice that it was kind of playing the setup a little bit further to the south. It wasn't really looking too robust of a setup for Southwest Michigan during that time, but maybe 36 to 48 hours before, there was a rather, I guess, quite a shift in the models based on, from what I remember about what I was observing. And I could see that it was shifting a little bit more of those more stark soundings for tornadoes up into portions of Southwest Michigan.
For me personally, I had a work conference in Boston, Massachusetts. So I knew I wasn't going to be here to be able to chase it. And, same as the rest of us, right? When we can't chase something, we hope that it's going to be a little bit on the lower end of what it's forecast to be. But with all of the, forecast soundings that we pulled for a lot of different areas and the wording that the SPC had used and the forecast that came out well in advance from the SPC to really highlight this event, it was becoming increasingly clearer that it was probably going to be the one, if not one of the 2 or 3 events of the year that defined the Michigan severe and tornado season.
May 7th to me, chasing wise, was very different. And I say that because usually with supercells and tornadoes, you can get a visual usually on where the rotation in the storm is, the mesocyclone. But on May 7th, it was so rain wrapped with this particular storm that I had literally zero idea where I was looking at, what I was looking at. I was having to go 100% off the radar data on my phone and on my tablet. So I was kind of chasing blind in a way. Not completely blind, but blind visually, but with the data on radar kind of helped out. But going into Portage, I was coming up toward the high school. I think it was a middle school or high school there, towards Center Ave. And I pulled into the high school not knowing that there was a tornado on the ground at that point. And I turned to the east, coming up to the north. I turned to the east and I see the tornado. And it's wide.
When I got out of class and looked at radar scope on my phone and there was 7 active tornado warnings in southern lower Michigan, I knew it had something serious going on. And it was tough because Nick was streaming by himself. Everyone else was out chasing. And I drove home from my class. It was about 13 minutes from where I was at to my hotel. And I tried to get home as fast as I could, get set up on the computer, get ready to stream and everything like that.
As I was driving up towards Colon, the tornado siren sounded right as we hit an intersection and we blasted out, which was, gave me goosebumps because I was like, wow, that's kind of a scary feeling when that tornado siren fires right next to you. But we took that road, went up to the north, and I got closer to the wall cloud. And just seeing that motion, this was, I guess, one of my first closer encounters with a tornado, I guess, of this caliber. And so I parked actually in a cornfield just south of Colon, right near where M86 is at. So I saw it and I was trying to hop on MSC. Unfortunately, I don't think I was able to hop on in time to show them where that tornado was at. But seeing that tornado hit just to the north of Colon, I could see basically the funnel come from top down out of the cloud right before it got rain wrapped. And seeing that was rather stunning, especially since I knew Colon was right near there.
there was a split second where I was like, I gotta chase this thing. So whipped the car around, got back out, headed eastbound, I believe Center Avenue, and tried to catch up with it, but unfortunately it was moving too fast. I tried to maneuver it out of town to the east of Portage and Kalamazoo, and I ended up getting stuck out there with downed trees um, and power lines and all the debris from it, and I just had to turn back around. And at that point, for me, Alex, who was in the Kalamazoo area as well, was on the radio saying that they had damage. So at that point, it was more so about going back into Portage, knowing that we had a tornado, not knowing the extent of damage that occurred at that point because it was all fresh and being sorted out. But I turned around and went back into Portage, and I ended up checking on the neighborhoods directly to the west of the FedEx facility that took a hit on the east side of town there by the airport. So
it was very tough being 600 miles away from my house, my friends, Brittany's family, all of her friends that are from the Southwest Michigan area, and having all these tornado warnings when you're that far away and it's impacting communities that you visit and you like, it's a hard feeling because you feel helpless.
May 7th to me was different. It was one of those days you don't see too often in Michigan. It's a higher end day, and unfortunately we had numerous tornadoes and a lot of large hail and some damaging winds as well. But I just remember the main takeaway for me was, number one, the visual aspect. I couldn't make it out, the tornado itself. It was just kind of a weird day for Michigan standards all around, but it was very, very humbling, but also a learning experience for me as a chaser, because just when you think you have Michigan weather figured out and these storms figured out, you don't. You really don't.
Seeing a lot of the damage that was coming into the page and seeing some of the videos that were coming in, it's like, I can't be there to help. Like, that's what I want to do. My storm chasing vehicle is rigged out at all times for search and rescue. It's got chainsaws, sledgehammers, axes, spray paint, stuff to be able to not only offer search and rescue, but help, set it up if need be and help out until paramedics and other first responders can arrive. And the fact that my vehicle was sitting idle in my driveway, it hurts. Like it physically hurt me to not be there and make a difference. And
that tornado will probably stand as probably one of the more, I guess, memorable tornadoes in my mind, just because of how close to home it was. Like, my home is not even maybe 10 to 15 miles from where this damage path was. So, and seeing pictures from some of my students, seeing who actually saw the tornado as it came close to their house, hearing the stories from all my friends, really put into a lot of perspective how personal this is when it actually hits people. And it's not, when you're chasing, you don't really think about, I mean, you do, but at the same time you are very focused on, like, being able to get a shot of that tornado, being able to send that out to people, which is really what one of our biggest goals is, to help people by showing them what's going on out there. But once you hear the stories of how a storm affects people, it really puts into perspective, and it gives a little bit more, I guess, meaning into what you do as a storm chaser. You do it because for me, I love to chase because it is raw power that you see out there, and just seeing the beauty of all that's out there it's something that impacts me every time I do it. But at the same time, just the ability that you have to just help people with being warned and seeing exactly what's going on, and just be able to be helpful influence to people who struggle with fear of these storms, and just maybe encourage them to, there is hope in the midst of a storm. That's really what I hope that I can convey. And May 7th definitely changed a bit of my perspective on that.
I think the overall message here that us staff and chasers have kind of themed out for May 7 was that event was a lot more personal. We always see these kinds of events that always happen outside of the state, and it's whether it's to the west or south of us where it's more common. But once you see a strong tornado with a strong CC drop, debris signature basically, that's going through areas that you know or that you grew up as a child or have families or friends that could be impacted by these, it becomes a whole lot more personal. And that gut in your stomach, it's not a great feeling. And that's the case for, I bet, many of you guys that had to deal with that day. So the urgency and messaging that day was very important, and I think it hit a lot of people personally during that chase on the severity of the situation, where it first went from maybe a few supercells that could produce a tornado or two to, okay, we have strong supercells producing strong hail, strong winds, and yes, even strong tornadoes, which when you know that's happening, you know that people's lives could be forever changed, and that's a scary feeling, and it's not a great feeling at all. And here at MSC, our theme is to convey the best weather message that we can possibly do that. We want to do that through means of chasing, through means of streaming, and through ways of forecasting, and that is our continued goal for the future, is to provide that information to you guys so that when the next big May 7 day or August 24 day happens, that you guys will have all the necessity needs from us, from your local National Weather Service, EMS, and any other resources that you need, that you have it, so that you can be weather prepared for the next event. So with that, I appreciate everyone that watched this video. Until then, see ya.